Picture this. You're sitting in the most powerful room in America, surrounded by cameras, facing the President of the United States. He's just given a signal to his security chief, a signal that means you're about to be physically removed from the building. What do? Do you go quietly, or do you say the one thing that could change everything? What you're about to hear is the true story of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and the 7 words that stopped the entire White House in its tracks. This isn't just about politics. It's about what happens when someone refuses to be silenced, even when the most powerful person in the world is telling them to shut up. And trust me, you won't believe how this ends. It's a packed morning in the East Room of the White House. President Trump sits at the head of a polished table, surrounded by lawmakers, mayors, and officials from across the country. The cameras are rolling for what's supposed to be a routine policy discussion about urban redevelopment. But routine is about to go out the window. Halfway down the table sits Jasmine Crockett, a Democratic congresswoman from Texas. She's not here to make friends or play nice. She's here because her district is about to be devastated by Trump's housing plan, and someone needs to speak for the people who can't get into rooms like this. The meeting starts predictably enough. Officials praise the plan, cameras click, everyone stays in their lane. But then Jasmine does something that changes everything. She asks a simple question that cuts through all the political theater, like a knife through butter. "Mr. President," she says, leaning forward just slightly, "your plan costs $20 billion. Can you tell us right now how much of that actually goes to affordable housing versus commercial projects?" The room goes dead quiet. This isn't the kind of question you're supposed to ask when the cameras are rolling. Trump doesn't miss a beat. He gives her the standard politician answer. Jobs will follow. People will benefit. It's all good. But Jasmine isn't buying it. So that a no on having a clear percentage, she fires back. You can actually hear people shifting in their chairs. This woman just called out the President of the United States on live television, and everyone knows it. But here's where it gets really interesting. Instead of backing down, Trump leans in. The conversation turns into a verbal sparring match, with neither side giving an inch. Officials around the table start looking uncomfortable, glancing at each other, like they're watching a car crash in slow motion. Then Trump says something that changes the entire dynamic. "You're here as part of a group," he tells her. "Let's keep it that way." It's not just what he says, it's how he says it, like he's reminding her who's in charge, who makes the rules in his house. But Jasmine doesn't flinch. "I'm here because my district is one of the ones that will be hit hardest by these changes. If that means I speak up, that's exactly what I'll do." The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael Riek, the White House security chief, shifts his position against the wall. His trained eyes aren't on Trump or Jasmine anymore. They're on the space between them, ready for whatever comes next. The back and forth continues, each exchange more heated than the last. Other officials around the table stay silent, nobody wanting to insert themselves into what's becoming a direct collision between a congresswoman who won't be intimidated and a president who's used to getting his way. Then it happens. Trump's patience finally snaps. He looks directly at Jasmine, his voice carrying that edge that everyone in politics recognizes as dangerous territory. "We're here to move forward, not get stuck in complaints," he says. "You either get on board or get out of the way." Jasmine's response is ice cold. "I'm not in the way, Mr. President. I'm in the room. There's a difference." And that's when Trump makes the move that nobody sees coming. He pushes his chair back slightly, looks her dead in the eye, and says the words that will define this entire moment. "And you're in this room because I allowed it." The atmosphere changes instantly. Several people let out small gasps they can't contain. The president has just crossed from policy debate to personal dismissal, and everyone can feel it. But Jasmine doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't point fingers or get dramatic. Instead, she leans back in her chair and delivers a line that cuts deeper than any shout could. "If the only voices allowed here are the ones that agree with you, then it's not a discussion. It's a performance." That does it. Trump's face hardens, and he makes a quick gesture toward the wall, where his security chief is standing. "Mike," he says, never breaking eye contact with Jasmine, "take her out." The words land like a thunderclap. Michael Riek moves immediately, not fast, but with the deliberate precision of someone who's done this before. The press cameras swivel to catch him walking toward Jasmine's chair. Other officials pretend to look at their notes, but you can see the tension in their shoulders. This is it. The President of the United States has just ordered a sitting congresswoman to be physically removed from a meeting for asking tough questions. Riek reaches her chair and leans down. "Congresswoman," he says quietly but firmly, "I'll need you to come with me." Every camera in the room is focused on this moment. Every microphone is picking up the sound of his footsteps, the scrape of chairs, the absolute silence from everyone else at the table. Jasmine doesn't move. She keeps her hands folded on the table, her breathing slow and controlled. She looks at Riek, then back at the president, and you can see her making a calculation. She has maybe 10 seconds before she's escorted out of the room. 10 seconds to decide whether she goes quietly or makes this moment count. She turns toward Trump, and her voice carries across that long table with perfect clarity. "Mr. President, you can remove me from the room, but you can't remove the truth from the record." The sentence hangs in the air like smoke. Riek stops mid-step. Trump doesn't respond immediately. The entire room seems frozen, like someone had paused on the most dramatic moment in White House history. But then something incredible happens. From halfway down the table, a housing commissioner from Florida mutters into his microphone, "She's got a point." Another voice follows him across the table, a Republican advisor from Indiana. "The record's the record. Can't argue with that." Suddenly, the people who were supposed to stay silent are speaking up. Officials who came here to rubber stamp Trump's plan are quietly undermining his authority, right there in front of the cameras. Trump's eyes dart around the table, taking the faces of people who just, however subtly, sided with the woman he ordered removed. For the first time in this entire confrontation, he looks uncertain. Riek stands there, one hand near the back of Jasmine's chair, clearly waiting for explicit instructions that aren't coming. The silence stretches longer than anyone expected. This is a president who never lacks for words, standing speechless while a congresswoman stares him down, and his own allies question his judgment on live television. Finally, Trump raises his hand, but this time it's not an order. It's a dismissive wave. "Let's move on," he says, turning his attention to the papers in front of him. Riek steps back without a word, returning to his position against the wall. The cameras catch it all. The president's order quietly dissolving in front of press. The moment his authority cracked just enough to let the truth slip through. Jasmine doesn't celebrate. She simply opens her folder, slides a chart across the table, and begins speaking again, as if the entire confrontation was just a pause in normal conversation. But everyone in that room knows what just happened. A sitting congresswoman refused to be silenced by the President of the United States, and she won. Within hours, that clip is everywhere. The 7 words, "You can't remove the truth from the record," become a rallying cry that spreads across social media faster than anyone can control. News networks replay the moment endlessly. Political commentators analyze every gesture, every pause, every word. But the real impact isn't in Washington. It's in living rooms across America, where people are watching someone stand up to power and refuse to back down. The story spreads beyond politics. High school civics classes use the clip to discuss democracy and dissent. Community organizers share it before town halls. Parents explain to their kids why sometimes you have to speak up, even when it's scary. Back in her district, Jasmine's office is flooded with messages. Some praise her courage. Others criticize her for disrespecting the president. But all of them acknowledge that they witnessed something extraordinary, a moment when someone chose truth over comfort, principle over political safety. In the weeks that follow, the redevelopment plan faces new scrutiny. Lawmakers who stayed quiet during the meeting start asking the same questions Jasmine raised. It's not a complete victory, but it's movement in the right direction. But perhaps the most powerful response comes in a handwritten letter with no return address. The shaky writing reads, "I watched you that day. I've been quiet for years because I thought it wouldn't matter, but you made me think maybe it does. I'm going to speak up at my next council meeting. Thank you." That letter reminds Jasmine why she spoke up in the first place. Not for the headlines or the viral clips, but for people like Denise Alvarez, the grandmother in Dallas who told her, "Once the rent goes up, it's not just the building we lose. It's the block, the people, the way we know each other. Looking back on that moment in the White House, Jasmine reflects on what she learned. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be heard. You need to be the clearest, and you need to decide before you ever walk in what you're willing to risk for the truth. The moment lasted less than a minute, but its echo continues to ripple outward. In congressional hearings where lawmakers find their courage to ask tough questions. In city council meetings where residents demand accountability. In classrooms where students learn that democracy isn't just about voting. It's about having the courage to speak truth to power, even when that power wants you to stay quiet. Jasmine Crockett walked into the White House that day as a congresswoman doing her job. She left as a symbol of what happens when someone refuses to let their voice be taken away. And those 7 words, "You can't remove the truth from the record," continue to remind us all that while you can lose your seat, your turn to speak, even your welcome in a room. If you keep the truth intact, you haven't lost it all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be silenced. And sometimes that refusal can change everything.